Hello, this is Dr. L. In this tutorial, I will show you, I will talk about objects and classes in Java. So I will show you how to write code for classes and how to instantiate them in Java. But before we talk about it, let's kind of talk about just briefly what the objects and classes are. So objects is something that exists in real life. So, basically you can say that um, it's kind of, it kind of represent a real life object. So like, for example, you can say that, desk or a car is an object, or student is an object. So when you create objects in Java, it's kind of, it exists in the memory and perform a specific task. So there's two general capabilities that it can, you can kind of use objects for two different purposes. You can actually use it to store data. So data is basically pieces of data, data are stored in object and what we call fields. Okay, so basically when we'll actually create classes, we'll create fields, and the fields will be used to store data. In the same way, objects can also perform operation. The operation that an object can perform is known as methods in Java. Okay, now classes are where the objects come from. Okay, so a class is a code that describe a particular type of object. So basically, like, when in Java, what we'll do is we'll start with creating classes, and in the classes we'll have fields to kind of hold the data, and then we'll actually write methods to kind of define the behavior of that object. Okay, so you can kind of think of class as a blueprint that can be used to create a particular type of object. Okay, and when we create that object based on that blueprint, it will have the same kind of fields and the behavior. So once we start actually writing the code, I think it will kind of make more sense. Now we have already used classes before. So like we have used the scanner object, we have used the string objects, and the scanner object was based on the scanner class, and the string object was based on the string class. So when a program needs the service of a particular type of object, it can create that object based on this class, and then it can create like multiple copies of it. So like it can kind of so like for example, if we need more than one string, we can always create more than one instance of the string class. Generally we won't create multiple instance of the scanner object, but if you want, we can. So one scanner object could be linked to the standard input device like a keyboard, plus the scanner object can also be linked to a file. So if you want to read some data from a file, we can also do that. Okay, so let's see what happens. Like when the program is running, it uses classes to create in memory as many objects of a specific type as you want. So basically each object that is created is called the instance of the class. Okay, and I will show you how to create a class, and I will show you how to create the instance of class. So let's go and start a JGraph, and then basically we'll start writing the code, and then I will show you how to create classes and how to instantiate them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Java file. Now, because this will be just a class, so there won't be any IO. It will just kind of contain information about the class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create and I'm going to kind of define how it's going to work over here. So basically at the top I'm actually going to write down some information about what that class is going to be. It has so it's a rectangle class, so it kind of represents a rectangle. So it has two fields, length and width. Okay, and then it will also have some methods. So basically those methods are going to help us manipulate. So basically we'll need the method to kind of retrieve the value, what is stored in the length and the width field, and if you want to update the length and width field, or if you want to know the area of the rectangle, then we'll have method which can actually help us do all that stuff. So we'll have following methods. Okay, so what are these method going to do? So number one, set width is method is going to return the width of the rectangle. Oh, sorry, it is going to update the or set the width of the rectangle. Set length method can be used to set the length of the rectangle. Get width will actually tell us what the width is, and the get length is going to tell us what the length is. And the get area is going to be used for calculating the area of the rectangle. Okay, so let's go and start our class. Now in this way class there won't be any main method. Main method will be in a separate class, which is going to be our driver class, which is actually going to instantiate objects of the rectangle class. Okay, so we'll just kind of define the fields. So the first thing we're going to do is define our fields, and the way we define our fields is by starting with a private keyword, then the type. So basically that represents what kind of data we want to store, and the name. Okay, so here's my first field. Okay, so actually let me write this thing. Okay, let me actually do this. Declare field. And this is my syntax. Okay, so we have actually two fields, so length and the width, and then we'll kind of we can make them double, or we can make them integer. So I'm going to make them double. Okay, so double, and then I will say well, let me just fix the spelling over here. Okay, and I'm going to say length. Okay, so the declaration of a field is always going to start with the private keyword, then your type, and then of course the name. So the first field is of type double, and we are going to store the length of the rectangle in this one, and the second field is of type width, and we are going to store the width of the rectangle. Sorry. Okay, now we need method. So we need method to set our width and the length. So so let's actually define set. Okay, so first we are going to do is actually do our set width method. Okay, and the format is that it will start with the public keyword, and then it will have a return type. So that means this is a method which is actually going to do something, but it's not going to return any data back to us. So the void means that it's not going to return any response vectors. It will do certain thing, and that's it. Okay, so and I will call it set width, and the way it works is basically the set kind of indicate that it's a method which is going to set something, and then the width says that this method, we are going to use this method to change the value that is stored in the width field. Okay, now when we are kind of setting the value for a field, we need to kind of provide that information to it. So that will be kind of an input to the method, saying, okay, yeah, here's the value, go and set the width. So what we do is we have the type, and of course my width is double, so my input is also going to be double. Okay, so I'll just say width in double input. Okay, I'm going to just call it input, but you can call it so you can, so basically it's saying, okay, my data is of type double, and the name of the variable which will contain my input value is called input. Now, of course, you don't have to call it input. You can call it, whatever you want. You can call it W. You can call it, you can also call it width. But, I suggest that don't use the same name as the name of the field. Use something different. So you can also say like new width. Okay. So which shows that, this is the new value of the width that we are going to assign to our width field. Then I my opening and closing curly braces, and then there's only one thing that I'm going to do, sir. Is only one statement that I need, and that what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say width is equal to new width. Okay. So the way it's going to work is it's going to take the value that is in the new width and then it's going to assign it to my width field. Okay. In the same way, we'll actually do our set length method. So I'm going to actually copy this and I'm going to paste it over here, and then I'm going to change width to the length. So I'm going to call this method set length. So it says that it's going to update the value that is stored in the length field. Okay, and then I'm going to say new length, and then I'm going to say length equal new length. Okay, so basically what it will do is will take the value that is stored in the variable and it's assigning it to my field. Okay, now let's do my the get methods. So start with the get width, and again now in this case, because it's we are asking what the width is, so it's going to respond back to us, and the response must be, so basically I need to kind of put the type of the value that is going to be returned to me. Okay, so basically I'm kind of returning the width, and the width is of type double, so I'm going to say public double. Okay, and then I will say get width. Now it doesn't take any input because we don't have to provide in any input. It's just going to actually, so we are just asking the rectangle what your width is, and it's going to respond back, but we don't need to provide it any input. Okay, so opening closing curly braces, and it will again have only like one single statement, so it will just say return width. So return statement is used to kind of return the data which is stored in the width field. So it's the statement which kind of says, okay, this is the response. So take the data that is stored in the width field and then kind of respond back with that. So basically, so rectangle is kind of telling us that, okay, yes, my width. Okay. Now in the same way, we can also do the get length method. So I'm going to copy and paste this. So now I'm going to change width to my length. Now we need one more method, which is the get area. So get area is basically going to take the length and the width, it's going to multiply it, and it's just going to respond back with that result. Okay, so I'm going to say get area, and again it will be kind of, the format is going to be kind of similar to the get length and the width, except that instead of just returning the width and the length, we are going to actually multiply the width and the length, and that's what's going to be returned to us. Okay, so I'm just going to say in this method return width multiply by length. So it's going to actually do the calculation first, and if you want we can actually put this in the parentheses, but you don't have to, because the calculation will be done first and then the result is going to be returned by a method, and that's it. So this is our rectangle class, and we can actually compile this. We won't be able to run it because we don't have any main method. So actually let's kind of save this, and then you can see that my class was saved and my class was compiled. Okay, so now we need another class which is going to actually instantiate a rectangle object. So let's actually go and do a new Java class, and we So I will say that okay, let me actually put two asterisks in there. So what it's going to do, it's going to actually instantiate rectangle objects. Okay, so basically kind of it's going to create objects of type rectangle. Okay, so now we need, so it's still a class. So I'm going to call it class and I'm going to call it demo rectangle. Okay. Now this class will also contain a main method. So basically when you run it, it will start from demo rectangle class. Okay. Okay. So how do I create rectangle objects? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually declare some variable of type rectangle. Okay. So it's the same thing as like when you declare variable of type int or double or or a string. Okay. So I'm going to say, so it will start with rectangle. That means I'm creating variable of type rectangle. So it's like, if it was a string class, then we'll just say string and then of course the name of the variable. If it's an int, integer, then I will just say int and the name of the variable. If it's a double, then I'll say double. So instead of that, now I'm actually creating variables which can hold rectangle. So I'm going to, the type is going to be rectangle. Okay. So I'm just going to call it box1, box2, and box 3. Okay, so we have three rectangle boxes, or maybe let's actually call it something else. Let's call it floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. So basically what we have is we have three floors and they are of type rectangle. So so that means each floor will have a width and the and the length. Okay, now we have just declared those variables. We have not really created anything. So how do we actually go around creating it? So what we have to do is we have to say, okay, let's actually write this: create rectangle objects. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say floor 1 equal to new rectangle. So what it's going to do, it's going to actually create this rectangle object in the memory, and it's going to be stored. So basically that memory location is going to be pointed to by floor. Now of course once I do this, I have not initialized any the length and the width. So like if you try to go and look at the length and the width, it was going to be 0. So how do I actually go around initializing them? So I can say, okay, so let's actually initialize length and width. Okay, so what I can do is I can say floor 1 dot set width 14.5. okay, and then we can say floor 1 dot set length, let's say for example 10.1. okay, so now we have defined, so create a variable, initialize my rectangle, and set the width and the length. Okay, and now we can actually go and kind of display the data about that rectangle. So we can say system.out.print ln data for a rectangle number 1. Let me actually just say rectangle 1, and then I'm going to say so I'm going to display my width, and then I'm going the same way. I'm actually, I can't really just go and do width, so I have to actually do floor 1 dot get width. Okay, and the same way I'm actually going to go and display the length of the rectangle. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'll say length, and I'll just say get length over here. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the area. So I'm going to say area and I will just say get area over here. Okay, so let's go and compile this. Let's actually save this and then compile this. Okay, so one syntax error. So let's see what's going on. I think I got too many parentheses in there. So let's get rid of that. Okay, let's compile it again. Okay, I misspelled my rectangle. So okay, hopefully this time it will work. Okay, so okay, what's going on? Okay. Okay, let's go and see what do we have in the rectangle class. Did we set get width set? Oh, okay, so LENG. So I misspelled it over here. So okay, so let's go back and redo this. Okay, this time it worked. Okay, so let's go and run this. So it created the rectangle and then kind of displayed the information about that rectangle. The width is 14.5, that's what we set the width to. And then the length is 10.1, that's what we set it to. And then of course it calculates the area. Now I can actually create more rectangles in the same way. So what I can do is I'm going to actually copy this from here to here. I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it over here. Okay, so I'm going to do now second rectangle. But now, this is second rectangle is going to be called floor 2. So I'm going to change this to floor 2. And let's also, and then of course I'm going to also change the width and the length. I'm going to, let's say, make it 10.0 by 20.0. And then, so this is my second rectangle, so I'm going to make it 2. And then I'm going to change my floor 1 to floor 2. Okay. Okay, let's go and compile this. Okay, and let's go and run it. So information about my first rectangle, rectangle 1, 14.5, 10.1, and then the area is 146.45. Rectangle number 2, width and length 20, and then the area is 200. Okay. Now we can actually create one more. So let's actually create one more. Actually, before I do that, let me actually do one more thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add one more line in here. Um, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a line between the data about different rectangles. Okay. Okay. Just to make it kind of look nicer. So I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to copy and paste second rectangle. So I'm going to call this third. Now of course that will be my floor number 3. Okay, so I'm going to change that to 3, and then so change everything to 3. Okay, so this is third, and then this is 3. Okay, so let's go and save and then compile this. Oh, you know what, let's actually change the length and the width too. So let's make it let's say 15.0, and let's make it maybe 25.3. Okay, compile and then go and let's run it. So go to a run, clear this out, and then run this. So now I have my rectangle number 1, width and length, area, rectangle 2, and rectangle 3. Now of course, I can create more rectangles if I need to. So if I need more rectangles, I can actually, all I have to do is declare more variables of rectangle type, and then I can go and instantiate them. Okay. So just to kind of summarize it, my rectangle class, this kind of define, this kind of the blueprint of my class. So, tells you that, this class or object of this type can have 2 different fields, length and width. And of course, I have all my set method, which are going to initialize the length and the width. And then I have my get, which is going to tell me what the length and the width is. And of course, there's a get area, which is going to tell me what the area of that rectangle is. Okay, so now there's no input output over here, and it's not, so I'm not going to initialize or instantiate any rectangle over here. That is going to be done in my demo class. Okay, so this is where, and this is where my main method is going to be. Now remember, there's no main method in my rectangle class. My main method is going to be in the demo rectangle. Now, I call it demo rectangle, you can call it anything else. So like you can say like a driver class or the main class, or whatever you want to call it. So this is where my main method is. So when I run my program, my main method is going to execute, and it's basically going to, so this is where I'm going to declare variables of type rectangle, and then this is where I'm actually going to instantiate objects of type rectangle, and then I can kind of set the data in them. So like, if you have more data, then of course, I need to kind of set the, so like, if there was another area. So let's actually, for, I mean, just to kind of give you an example, let's say if I want to store the color, so I can actually create one more field in there. So, let's say if I say private, and so color is going to be like a string class or a string type. Then, I will have set color method, and then the get color method. And then over here in my demo, I'm also going to set the color. So let me actually kind of quickly show you, just kind of, to make sure that you understand that you can always add more fields in there. So I'm going to call it, let's see, private string color. Okay. And of course, I will have a set method for it. So let's actually go and by the way, I can add method anywhere I want. So I don't, there's no requirement to follow any certain pattern. So I'm going to just say at the end, void set color, and then string new color, and then I'm going to say color is equal to new color. Okay, and then I'm also going to do the get method for it. So I will say like string and the only thing it's going to do it's going to just return the color. So return color. Okay, now in my demo, so let's actually go and save this first. In my demo, then I can actually go and say floor one dot set color, and then I have to kind of provide the color. So I can say, let's say blue. Okay, so that means that rectangle is going to be of blue color. Okay, now of course I can also display that information over here. So I can say so let's actually copy this, and I will just say color, get color. Okay, let's compile this, and okay, so what's happened? Set color. Okay, so and of course I misspelled my blue too, so let's actually go and fix that too before we run it. So once I fix it, compile it, go to our run window, clear this out, and then run it. Okay, so in the case of the first rectangle, it gives me the color, but we didn't set the color for the rectangle 2 and rectangle 3, so of course in that case it's not going to show that information in there. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope this is going to help you for your homework. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.